our group decided to do conflicts inside of Bosnia or Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia is found in Europe, and more specifically, southeastern Europe, as seen here. So, Yugoslavia is composed of the countries that we know today as Serbia, Croatia, Slovenia, Kosovo, Bosnia and Herzegovina, North Macedonia, and Montenegro. Inside of Serbia, in Yugoslavia, provinces of Kosovo and Vojvodina were given autonomous status in order to acknowledge the specific interests of Albanians and Magyars. Unified at the end of World War II, when the communist dominant partisan force led by Josip Tito liberated the country. The state was originally highly centralized, both politically and economically, with power held firmly by Tito's Communist Party of Yugoslavia and a constitution closely modeled on that of the Soviet Union. A series of new constitutions continually shifted power away from the central government and a more loosely coordinated union, similar to the states of the United States of America before the Revolutionary War that brought them all together under the central government. In 1945, the government completed a series of policies similar to the ones in the Soviet Union, such as nationalizing large land holdings, industrial enterprises, public utilities, and other resources. This helped to launch a strenuous process of industrialization. However, in 1948, Yugoslavia split from the Soviet Union, and by the 1960s, it placed greater emphasis on market tactics. Under these new market economy-esque policies, significant growth occurred in the 50s and 60s, but subsequently slowed, and this caused Yugoslavia to be plagued by inflation, unemployment, and low productivity in the 80s. This caused debate over how to resolve these pressing financial issues, which led to the rekindling of old divides within the nation, especially along the lines of wealthier northern and western regions who were frequently investing money into inefficient enterprises in the poorer southern and eastern regions. This greatly frustrated them and rekindled the ethnic divides. On May 4th, in 1980, Tito, who was a major head of communism and a unifier of the country, died. This caused major ethnic tensions that had been quiet for decades to begin to resurface. Also caused a weakening of communism and communistic values that contributed to the economic problems in the 80s. Tito was also known as a great centripetal force by uniting the country and pressing on towards one main goal. The breakup was also aided by the beginning of the collapse of the Soviet Union that provided an outside threat that promoted cooperation within Yugoslavia. And this caused, on June 25th, 1991, Slovenia and Croatia to declare secession from the Yugoslav Federation. Macedonia, now called North Macedonia, quickly followed suit on December 19th, and in February of 1992, the Bosniaks decided to secede. Serbia, including subregions of Kosovo and Vojvodina, and Montenegro, decided to stay within the Yugoslavia, but instead renaming it the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, adopting a new constitution in 1992, after heavy pressures on Montenegro to oppose the dissolution of Yugoslavia. Both Serbia and Montenegro each had separate governments and separate constitutions, and attitudes for independence in Montenegro and Kosovo persisted. However, this was finally dissolved in 2006 when Montenegro decided its independence. So, one of the major points that I want to talk about before we move on is that Slovenia, as you can see here, was one major ethnic group, and none of the borders really overlapped. So, there were no main ethnic tensions in Slovenia, so when they decided to leave the Union, it was all they had to do was change the insignia on their uniform, as all the people in the upper levels of government were Slovenes. So there was virtually no bloodshed when Slovenia left the Union. But this is not the case for all of the other places which have severe ethnic and boundary disputes. And here's a quick video to
The term Balkan has become synonymous with religious intolerance and ethnic conflict. The fall of communism, elsewhere in Europe celebrated with joy, triggered great political upheaval in the Balkan region. In Yugoslavia, a bloody civil war raged, and the country disintegrated into several smaller independent states. About 2 million people were displaced, many of whom still face an uncertain future.
After the breakup of Yugoslavia, a ton of border crises occurred, one of the major ones being between Kosovo and Serbia. Kosovo originally sought out peaceful movements for independence, but Serbia rejected these diplomatic negotiations because they had historical claims to the land. The problem with this was Kosovo is 92% Albanian and only 6% Serbian. So after Serbia rejected these diplomatic negotiations, Kosovo fought back through the Kosovo Liberation Army, originally targeting corrupt Serbian police, but later directly clashing with Serbian armed forces. These Serbian armed forces began to retaliate by killing civilians to instill fear, trying to stop the opposition. This only enraged the Kosovars, and in fact, membership in the Kosovo Liberation Army actually grew. Despite fighting, the army sought international help to resolve the conflict. An example of this is a conference held in France in 1999, which involved representatives from Kosovo, Serbia, the US, and many other European countries. Negotiations ended for peace and independence to Kosovo, but Serbia opposed this, refusing to sign the agreement, and continued to abuse the Kosovars. And once word of this abuse spread, NATO stepped in and began a bombing campaign against Serbia. These bombings originally had little effect, and potentially because of the bombings, the Serbian government began to ethnically cleanse the Albanian majority, uprooting a ton of Kosovo Albanians and sending them to camps. During these relocations, Serbian troops began to kill unarmed citizens, and as the bombings entered the second month, the killings of Albanian civilians only intensified. Once news of these horrors and abuses reached international ears, pressures to end the violence mounted, and NATO deployed ground forces to try to stop it. This forced the Serbian army to withdraw from Kosovo, and safe passage was established by the NATO forces for the ousted Kosovo Albanians to return to their homes. Currently, 99 out of the 193 UN countries recognize Kosovo's independence, including the US, UK, and the majority of European countries. Countries that don't recognize Kosovo's independence are Serbia, China, and Russia, and a couple others. Even though NATO stepped in and helped to solve some of the tensions between Kosovo and Serbia, there is still conflict in the area. Kosovo has a problem between the Albanian dominated government and the Serbian minority. Kosovo wants to make the majority Serb areas swap their Serbian issued car number plates over for Kosovo ones. But the people there don't want to do that because they don't recognize Kosovo's independence. And because of this, the Serbian minority barricaded roads, and some shots were reported fired in these areas. Serbia also has problems because of this border conflict. They want to join the EU, but a rule is in place that there can be no open territorial issues, and the Kosovo Serbia border conflict constitutes one. So the Serbian president is seeking support from Russia. Here is a video of the conflict.
Moving west from Kosovo, we see another border dispute and ethnic conflict in Bosnia. Bosnia and Herzegovina consisted of Serbs, Croats, and Muslims, and this Muslim group was also called Bosniak Muslims. However, there was no recognized Bosnian nationality in the country. While a majority of the population was part of this Bosniak Muslim group, it was considered an ethnicity and not a nationality. And because it was considered its own ethnicity, conflict arose because the Serbs and Croats did not want to live in a multi ethnic country with Muslim plurality. So conflict began, and the groups fought to unite the portions of the republic to Serbia and Croatia, respectively. The Serbs and Croats began to ethnically cleanse the Bosniak Muslims in order to strengthen their case for separation. Because of the cleansing, the Serbs and Croats would become the majority ethnicity and would also be ethnically homogeneous, and therefore better candidates for joining Serbia and Croatia. As you can see from this map, pre-war, these different groups were kind of scattered around the country, and post-war, you can see how these groups kind of form like larger areas and are more, homogeneous, more as one. Serbian roots of ethnic cleansing were most noticeable and combated by the UN. This ethnic cleansing was particularly intense in areas close to the border of Serbia, as much of that area was inhabited by Bosnian Serbs who were separated from Serbia by areas with Bosniak Muslim majorities. So conflict arose as these two groups, tried to merge with each other with this one group in between. When Bosnia attempted to secede, Serbia, under Slobodan Milosevic's leadership, invaded with the claim that they were there to free fellow Serbian Orthodox Christians living in Bosnia. Starting in 1992, Serbia fought with the Bosnian Serbs to remove Bosniaks and used old Yugoslavian military equipment. Many Bosniaks were driven into concentration camps, where women and girls were raped and other civilians were tortured, starved, and murdered. The UN took note of these atrocities, and in 1993 they created 3 safe zones for the Bosnian Muslims in Sarajevo, which is the modern-day capital of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Gorazde, and Srebrenica. Each of these safe zones were protected by an enclave of UN peacekeepers. However, in 1995, in Srebrenica, Serbia committed the worst massacre in Europe since World War II when an estimated 23,000 women, children, and elderly people were put on buses and driven to Muslim-controlled territory, while 8,000 battle-aged men were detained and slaughtered. The so-called safe area of Srebrenica ended up falling without a single shot fired by the UN. In 1994, NATO initiated airstrikes against Bosnian Serbs to stop the attacks, and the Bosnian Serbs successfully created a continuous area dominated by their ethnic group. In 1995, in Dayton, Ohio, the Dayton Peace Accords was created, and it ended the conflict in Bosnia. A force was created from these accords to maintain the ceasefire of the divided lands and the warring ethnicities. And this agreement awarded disproportionately large areas of land to Serbs and Croats and small areas of land to the Muslims. Since the conflict was resolved, the International Criminal Tribunal for Yugoslavia, the ICTY, has charged more than 160 persons and has tried the former president and leader of the Bosnian Serb army for their atrocities committed during this conflict. And here is a video that showcases the destruction from the conflicts in Bosnia.
Can you imagine a country where you can still find ancient towns ruled by a crystal clear sea? Yugoslavia is a country with a long turbulent history. After World War II, it became a socialist federation made up of 6 republics and 2 autonomous regions. It speaks 5 official languages and prays to an Eastern Orthodox, Catholic, and Muslim god. This is no imaginary land. This is Yugoslavia.
In retaliation, the Croats targeted the Mostar Bridge, which Muslims had built 400 years earlier. It was 4 years to the day since the Berlin Wall had come down, ushering in the New World Order.
This is no imaginary land. This is Yugoslavia.
Going back to the Bosnian dispute, the borders were confirmed in the Dayton Peace Accord as well as by Bosnia's new constitution. However, Bosnia and Herzegovina later argued that they should be given Sutorina, which was currently being held by Montenegro. This would provide another crucial land to sea access for Bosnia, as they already had very limited access to the sea. This caused tensions to flare at the end of 2014 when an opposition member of the parliament in Bosnia said that the government's proposal should be rejected and that authorities should set up a commission to investigate the status of Sutorina. Some Bosnian officials and intellectuals maintain that the area was illegally grabbed by Montenegro in 1945 upon the formation of Yugoslavia. They claimed that it should have been returned to Bosnia since the subsequent border changes were never ratified. Montenegrin officials rejected this claim, arguing that Bosnia had recognized the country's independence in 2006 based on its existing borders, and further argue that this issue was resolved by the Badinter Committee, which handled the legal questions deriving from the breakup of former Yugoslavia. They ruled in 1991 that the internal borders of the former Yugoslav republics should not be changed. After several months of heated debate between the two countries, with the Montenegrin president refusing to endorse the appointment of a new ambassador to the Bosnia and Herzegovina in January, the parliament of Bosnia and Herzegovina rejected a resolution that would have blocked the border agreement in May 2005. Mr. Vujovic then confirmed that the appointment of a new Bosnian and Herzegovina ambassador. Changes are viewed by positive as the EU, but they have made it clear that these changes will not accelerate the process of acceptance. And this is still a touchy matter in the area.
Unlike their land borders, Slovenia did encounter some issues with its neighbors in terms of sea borders. So, Slovenia and Croatia had a little dispute over this area right here, whether or not it was Slovenian waters or Croatian waters. Both of these nations are part of NATO and the EU, and this disputed area extends 670 kilometers. Uh, the Drnovšek-Rakan Agreement had been signed by both governments, but has only been ratified by Slovenia because, as you can see, Slovenia needs these waters in order to access this corridor to international waters. So Slovenia is really the country that's looking to benefit from this agreement, while Croatia is more hesitant. An arbitration agreement was signed in November 2009, and a court ruling decided in 2017 on the final demarcation between the two states has not been accepted, and the European Commission president called for an urgent bilateral solution, warning that the disputes will not be tolerated of new EU member states. In June 2018, Slovenia decided to take Croatia to court for non-implementation of the arbitration ruling. And Slovenia needs this disputed area, as I said, because it would help really bolster their trade internationally. Because as of now, they have to travel either through Italian waters or Croatian waters in order to reach that area. So this is very imperative for them to gain control of this disputed area. And here are our citations.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you for listening to our presentation.
The end. Thank you for watching.